Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We got some breaking news coming down from the NHL just a few moments ago, so we will get to that here in a second. As always, whatever you guys want to talk about in the chat, let me know. Also, want to let you know that Twitch has a thing going on right now for new subscribers. Get 3 months of Discord Nitro with any new sub purchase before October 31st at noon Pacific time, and enjoy custom emojis, personalized avatars, and more on Discord. New and qualified returning subscribers only. Terms apply. Bibbidi bobbidi bloobidi bloobidi blue. So obviously I don't have a Discord, but Game Over does. So if you wanted to hop on that, Game Over Nitro, Discord Nitro, a pretty good way of going about all of that. So if you wanted to, if that is something that is budgetarily within your means, then by all means hop on board with that, and it's always greatly appreciated there for sure. I have a poll going on right now on who we think is going to win Game 5 of the World Series tonight. So let your voice be heard on that. But we will begin with the breaking news from the National Hockey League with a bit of an injury update. So we talked a bit about it yesterday, but Connor McDavid is going to be out for a little bit for the Oilers. Now, not as debilitating as maybe it could have been, as he is going to be out now 2 to 3 weeks was the official prognosis of that. So I think that there is going to be I think this is going to be okay from an Edmonton Oilers standpoint. But let's look at the schedule here a little bit. They're off today. They take on the Nashville Predators on Thursday. I'm not going to do win-loss or anything like that. But just like that is a team that is starting to figure it out a little bit. Then they have the Flames, who aren't figuring it out. They're the opposite of figuring it out. Devils are good. Knights are good. Canucks are good. That is a really tough stretch to go through when you are missing your top player. And the other difficult part, not that there is a significant lack of in-division games, but those are some big division matchups that would be nice if you could put a couple points against a division rival, and not having your best player kind of stings for that one. Then you got the Islanders, who I perpetually underestimate. Another one against the Preds. And then one that is a bit of a bummer. It is the Eastern Canadian road trip, where they're at Toronto, at Montreal, and then at Ottawa. 3 weeks from today would be the 20th, I guess. So right after that Eastern road trip, when they are returning. And so there are quite a few good hockey teams, I would say, in that stretch that the Oilers would be facing. So, again, far from ideal from an Edmonton standpoint, but now this is an opportunity for a lot of these guys to step up. This has been a very difficult season for this team to manage offensively, and it has to be very frustrating from an Oilers standpoint to continue to deal with all of that and now deal with it without your best player. So, again, a chance for these guys to step up. You have a number of different guys who are more than capable of filling in this role. Like, this is an Oilers team. Of all the injuries you can have, you never want one to Connor McDavid. There is simply no replacing a Connor McDavid. But if you were to just airlift Connor McDavid off of this hockey team, and pretend just in your mind it never existed for just a second, and put like just this roster out there, again, a number 1 of Draisaitl, a number 2 of Nuge down the middle, feeling pretty good about where that sits. So again, no one in the NHL is crying sorrow over anything for the Edmonton Oilers, but the game is better when Connor McDavid is in it, and he is playing well. So hopefully a speedy recovery for him, because that is a bit of a difficult schedule for the Oilers to kind of go through. Let's just, you know what? I said we wouldn't do win-loss, but let's see. Like, they have the 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 11. Let's say 11 games through that stretch. If they can come out of that, let's say 5-5-1, I think that is a pretty significant win, given where this team is at and given the opposition they have on that schedule. I think anything above 500 without Connor McDavid in the lineup is just absolutely brilliant from this team. And I think even like a 4 wins in there, you get a little bit of, you know what, we survived it. If you get down to like 3 wins, hopefully there's a couple overtime losses in there for you, because it starts to get a little bit ugly. And again, you start to fall off the pace a little bit when it comes to a very talented Western Conference. So that is the story from the NHL. Let's move to Major League Baseball. The New York Yankees, you knew they weren't going to go down without a fight. At least you assumed they weren't going to go down without a fight. And fight they did last night against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Is it going to be enough? Probably not, but let's talk about it. It is the one more time Major League Baseball breakdown here on Couch Potato Diary, because we continue to have a baseball season as the New York Yankees keep things alive for the World Series with a victory over the Dodgers last night. And you knew coming into this game that the Yankees would fight back. At least you assumed. Like, there was a part of you that was like, you know what, they might just go quietly into that night. And there it goes. But I think you had to expect that there was going to be a fight back from the Yankees. And that offensive eruption actually could be kind of important. I'm sure there is a better sign of this. Honestly, like the Kawhi picture in the back there, the 2019 Raptors, where Fred VanVleet just kind of sees the ball go through the hoop and all of a sudden turns into a different dude. And it comes off of having a kid and all that as well. But the one that I always go with was Mario Chalmers. I think it was the 11 NBA Finals. He was struggling mightily and then sloppily gets fouled, hits a free throw, and basically couldn't miss the rest of the way because he just needed an easy one to just go in. And he became a bit of an X factor for that stacked Miami Heat team. And this could have that kind of an effect for the Yankees, just to finally get a few hits off of real-life human beings wearing Dodgers uniforms has to be at least a little bit of a help to this team to get that confidence back and get something going offensively, because a lot of the focus has been on Judge, and rightfully so. When you are the captain and you are making that amount of money, that amount of focus comes with it, and that amount of expectations come with it. And so when you suck, people are going to point it out at you. And so, yes, a lot of the attention on him has been, I think, warranted. But I do also think that it has kind of masked just how bad the rest of this offense has been. Like we said yesterday, like Torres is getting on base, Soto is doing his thing, and Stanton's hitting the ball hard. Sometimes it is at people, sometimes it isn't, but he's hitting the ball hard. The rest of the lineup isn't doing shit right now. And you get Wells getting that home run swing for him going. He was, like I said the other day, he was hitting my dog's weight in the playoffs. This has been, it's been a struggle. And now to get that rally going yesterday, maybe it gives them a bit of a boost going into today. And this one, I mean, every game now is wildly important for the Yankees. Their next loss and their season is over. But it is the Garrett Cole start. This is the one that we said coming into the series, they needed to win all of these. And you go from game 1 to now game 5. And this is, it's a legacy moment potentially for him as well. If they can somehow battle back in this series and do something no team has ever done in the World Series before, then if Garrett Cole has a big outing tonight, he becomes a big part of that, and that becomes a gigantic part of his legacy. If they lose this game tonight, I don't think he gets the playoff choking moniker or anything like that, because he has been so good in playoffs past. But I think if he comes out and is brilliant again tonight, then we could have something pretty interesting on our hands. This one is still not the, if they win, then oh boy, watch out now, because you have Yamamoto just kind of this daunting figure waiting over either game 6 or 7 for the Dodgers here. And as this like absolutely dominant figure from game 2 who can now come out and shut you down. So yes, getting this one is obviously huge because it just keeps that ball rolling for the Yankees, gets you back to Los Angeles. But then you have this $325 million guy who pitched like he was worth every penny of that in the last game. That is still something hanging over this. So it is still a very long road for the Yankees. There are some times where team wins game 4 and game 5, and okay, well, they got the momentum now. But because it is now going back to Los Angeles and all of those things, it does just kind of put the brakes on that sort of a hype train a little bit. The one thing from a Dodger perspective, and I've been very clear about where my rooting interests lie in this series, but the one thing about this from a Dodger standpoint is I'm a little happy last night didn't work for them with the whole bullpen game and all of that. Like, I feel like you should have enough starting pitchers that you can have them for a 7-game playoff series. And so to not have that is, I get it's a sign of injuries and all of that, but to not have that is, I think, pretty gross. And so I am, if nothing else, happy that that has been rewarded here, and or not been rewarded, I guess, and that they're going to actually have to win this thing with an actual starting pitcher. And it makes the gray parts of my beard and head feel very happy. The old man yelling at cloud with that whole thing. So, World Series gets going, or continues tonight with Game 5. The Canadian Football League playoffs are coming up this weekend. I know not always the most popular subject on here, but it is a big time of year now in the Canadian Football League, and there are some players who I think are going to play key roles in that. So let's look at the X-Factors for everyone, for both of the CFL playoff games happening this weekend. It is a wonderful time of year to be a sports fan, and as the calendar gets ready to flip over to November with trick-or-treaters on the eve of one of the great candy nights of the year, for Canadian football fans, it means playoff time, and that is always so exciting up here. And so today, looking at the X Factors for the two games that we have this weekend, in the East semifinal with Toronto and Ottawa, and the West semifinal with BC taking on Saskatchewan. So for Toronto, it's Damonte Cox. He's had 80 plus yards in both games that they played against the Red Blacks this year. Chad Kelly has been fantastic. And I think he is such a great contested catch guy. He can push the ball down the field, and it allows them to kind of keep things moving a little bit with what he can do on second down. And so I think that this is a big moment, I think, for him. Speaking of big moments, some breaking news. The Calgary Stampeders announced that the following members of the team's coaching staff will not be retained for the 2025 season. Special teams coordinator and assistant coach Mark Killam, defensive coordinator Brett Munson, and defensive line coach Juwan Simpson. Further announcements regarding the football operations staff will be made at a later date. That coming from the Calgary Stampeders and their social media team. So, interesting move here. Mark Killam has kind of had this thought of being the next one for a while now, and kind of being the next in line to be the head coach once Dave maybe transitions into the general manager's role. So that is a not insignificant change. Munson and Simpson, I think Simpson, that one I can see because the defensive line so wildly underperformed this year. And when you have what we were saying all year long was a defense that was not performing to the sum of its parts, then it does seem like a fairly easy call to make to just shoo the coach aside and the defensive coordinator aside. I do think this is a bit of a mistake, though. I do think that this is a coordinator in Brett Munson who has had a significant impact on this defense for a while now, and there have been some years where the talent on the defensive side wasn't all that good, and he, along with others, were able to get the most out of that situation. And so that is, I think it's a bit of scapegoating going on here. I am interested that Dave stays the same in all of his role. But I also think that making these changes, like I just, if you're going to keep the main stuff the same, but then kind of scapegoat these guys, like it doesn't make sense to me. The Killam one is really surprising. But I mean, look, we said it in the talk on Monday and kind of in the power rankings yesterday. There isn't one aspect of the Stampeders where you can go, oh yeah, everything's great. Like, don't need to change that thing at all. So would I have made these changes while not changing things with the general manager? No, I wouldn't have. But can you come on here and say, well, look how good they played in X, Y, and Z. How could you possibly make these changes? Can't really say that either. So while, again, I wouldn't have done this, I would have made some bigger changes up at the top there. I can see where the Stampeders are coming from with that. So some breaking news again. All happening live while we're hanging out on twitch.tv/primetimepk here today. Back to the CFL Playoff X-Factors here. So let's just restart this whole thing. Damonte Coxie is the Coxie. why am I messing this guy's name up? Coxie is the one, who is the X Factor, I think, for the Toronto Argonauts. As I said before, he had 80 plus yards in both matchups with the Red Blacks this season. He is a really good contested catch guy, helps them push the ball down the field, and also helps them keep drives alive on second down. Since Chad Kelly came back, he and this team have been rolling in the passing offense, and I think Coxie is a big part of that, and they are going to need him in this game to continue to push that ball. And one of the reasons why is the X Factor on the Ottawa side, and that's Javon Santos-Knox. If they are going to be able to limit the Argos at all, they are going to have to stop Kadeem Carey and try to make these guys one-dimensional. They did that in, I would say, both games that they played this year. And in the first one, Chad Kelly threw all over the yard, but also turned it over and allowed Ottawa to stay in that game. The second one, the turnovers were a little bit limited. They still got a lot of passing yards off. But I think that if Carey is getting 4, 5, 6 yards on first down, you guys know what I think about that. I think it allows Kelly to really pick apart what I think is maybe a bit of a subpar secondary. So I think Santos-Knox, him coming back, has helped a little bit on this defense. He is going to have to be a big player in the East semifinal. Out west, we will start with the Saskatchewan Roughriders and Keyshawn Johnson. Part of a very talented receiving room. Harris just likes to spread the ball around, and it is just take what the defense gives you and move on with it. And it seems like the guys like Emelis and guys like Schaefer Baker get a lot of that attention, and so Johnson ends up in a lot of one-on-one situations, and there have been times where he has been the big play guy who has been able to come up with the big plays, obviously. But there have also been times where there has been a big play that is needed, a big play that is there to make, and a big play that he does not make. And so that is it's a drive killer, especially in Canadian football when you only get 3 downs to work with. So I think that this is going to be a very important moment here for Saskatchewan and for Keyshawn Johnson. Morning, Deeds. Thanks for stopping by today. I think that this is a chance for him to have really a breakout game here. Meanwhile, on the BC sideline, it's a couple. I have Keon Hatcher and Alexander Hollins. BC needs a secondary playmaker aside from McInnes to step up. Saskatchewan has been amazing at stopping the run this year with and even in a couple of games against Standback when these two teams have played. And so with obviously a lot of focus going to be on McInnes, although he picked Saskatchewan apart in that first game that they played, I think it is now going to be on one of these guys, either Keon Hatcher, who had a big game a couple weeks ago against Montreal, or Alexander Hollins, who was fantastic when Vernon Adams was at the controls early on in the season, when Vernon Adams was on his MOP run. I think Alexander Hollins was one of the real shining stars and fell off a cliff at some point. So BC needs him to find it. But it's going to be a couple of interesting games in the CFL on what is an interesting day in the Canadian Football League with the Calgary Stampeders making a couple of big moves, getting rid of Mark Killam, Brett Munson, and Jawan Simpson. For the American viewers, Jawan Simpson, former Alabama linebacker way back when. So now let's shift over to 4-down football, shall we? As it is getting ready for another week, heading into week 9 of the NFL. It is time, once again, for the Power Rankings. I was going to say counting them down. I think we're counting up in this case. 32-1 is where we are going here with the NFL Power Rankings. And we start the way we always do with the Carolina Panthers. They're bad. Moving on, we have a new team, second last, in the Tennessee Titans. They get just absolutely worked over by the Detroit Lions, and any hope that this team was going to have somewhat of a resurgence or anything feels like it has gone a while ago now. It is a time to start over out in Tennessee, and start over they must, because this is going very badly for them. They come in at 31. At 30, it's the Patriots that get a win over the New York Jets. Congratulations. I'm still not buying into anything you're selling at all. At 29, it is the Vegas Raiders. I do think that they played about as well as you could expect them to play against the Kansas City Chiefs, but not well enough to get out of the bottom 5. And at 28, it is the Cleveland Browns. And so again, just a quick little pause. If this is how the draft order ends up, which obviously this isn't entirely based on standings, but still, if this is how the draft order stacks up, Carolina drafting a quarterback one, I continue to believe would be a mistake, and I continue to believe would just keep them in this perpetual cycle that they are in with having a young quarterback, not having anything around him. Oh, wow, young quarterback can't drag this completely lifeless carcass across to a playoff game. Well, it must be the quarterback's fault, and they don't address the lifeless carcass part that is this roster. This is a very, very, very bad roster, and so I do think that this is a team that needs to do what Chicago did with them. And if they get that first overall pick, package it for a bunch of shit and try to rebuild it that way. At 31, it's the Tennessee Titans. So yeah, get a quarterback. For sure get a quarterback, I think. I think that they have done a decent job of putting up the rest of the foundation, but it's just Will Levis is not processing this game at the speed that he needs to. At 30, it's New England. There isn't a hope in hell they would be drafting a quarterback, that this would be their opportunity to help solidify some things around Drake May. At 29, it's the Raiders. I think they would be probably drafting a quarterback in this particular spot, and I think that that's probably the right move for them. And then the Cleveland one is always fascinating. We talk about it the last couple of weeks. You could cut Deshaun Watson, take just the biggest amount of dead money that any team ever has, but then have the quarterback on the rookie contract, and all of a sudden you're just kind of paying an average amount for your quarterbacks. You don't necessarily get the benefit of the cap savings with the young quarterback, but you get the upside of not having Deshaun Watson anymore. So that would be that. Coming at 27, it's Miami. It looked a little bit better this week, but still not much in losing to Arizona. At 26, it is Jacksonville. Again, a couple injuries now really kind of sting, and it feels like Doug Peterson on his last legs out there. Sorry, Deeds, I didn't see this before. If anyone wants to know who is going to underachieve this week in fantasy football, I'll share my lineup, and you can see who not to have in LOL. Yeah, it's been a bit of a rough go there, Deeds. That's that is for sure. Losing in the battle to Toxic here last week, but Toxic was going to beat anyone in that game. So at least you didn't waste a disappointing week on that one. At least at 25, it is the Giants. I kind of want to get them lower, but I still think they're playing a touch better just because of that defense than Jacksonville and Miami. At 24, it's the Colts. They are the perpetual shoulder shrug emoji team. Them and the Rams, who come up with a good win against Minnesota on Thursday night. Maybe that is a sign of things to come with how this offense can look now that everyone is healthy. We will see how long everyone stays healthy, and we will see off of Thursday night. I mean, the Jets looked good on a Thursday nighter a couple weeks ago, and they've barely won since. So, yeah. At 22, it is the Chicago Bears. That's a tough loss to take, but it is tough to erase 59 and a half minutes of some pretty good football by them. At 21, it's the Jets. They plummet down here after a loss to New England. I am done trying to pretend to take this team seriously. They are just so flawed right now. Ditto for the Dallas Cowboys at number 20. Just again, a very flawed roster, and one that is also expensive and not well coached. All good signs for the Cowboys. At 19, it is Tampa Bay. Some injury issues, maybe starting to have that stock plummet down a little bit. At 18, it's New Orleans. Again, kind of the same thing. Injury issues has really gotten in the way of what was a bit of an intriguing start to the year. At 17, it is Cincinnati. Speaking of shoulder shrug emoji teams, I can't figure these guys out for the life of me. One week, the offense looks like they've got it back on track. The next week, they can't do anything. One week, the defense looks like it's figured it out. The next week, they've been figured out, and they get stomped on. So I cannot solve this Cincinnati team. I think it is best to assume that they are just going forward. At 16, it's the Chargers. A tough loss against Arizona. They bounce back with the dominant performance against, again, a roster that, when beat up, is one of the worst in the sport in New Orleans. At 15, it is Arizona, the I can't quit these guys team, coming off of a big win over Miami. A win over the team that I have at 27th shouldn't move you up the rankings as much as it did, but again, I just can't quit Arizona. At 14, I have to at least bite the bullet a little bit and go with the Denver Broncos. They continue, even if it is against not great teams, they continue to put up great results, as annoying as that is. So I don't think Bo Nix is this good. I don't think Sean Payton's this good, but I can't argue with the results at this point. At 13, it is Seattle. That was another humbling loss that Seattle has taken this year, and just kind of a sign that when they face the tippity top of the NFL, they prove time and again that they aren't there. At 12, it is Atlanta. We kind of know what they are at this point. A defense that can play well against bad offenses, but not so well against good ones, and an offense that can put up some points. At 11, it's Pittsburgh. Again, this is one where I hate to take this seriously, but Russell Wilson's looked pretty good for a couple of weeks in a row. And stealing from the fantasy footballers, to look at the NBA Jam rules, 3 in a row and he's on fire. So we'll see what he can do in the Steelers' next game. At 10, it's Houston. They drop down. Even with a win, they drop down because of the Stephon Diggs injury. Those are just piling up on an offense that didn't need help in struggling this year. At 9, it is Green Bay. Again, injuries a concern with Jordan Love, but even then, it has not looked as good for the Packers this season. At 8, it is Minnesota. It's like... The losses down at the bottom don't punish you as much because there's a lot of whatever, but the good teams are starting to separate themselves a little bit, and so for Minnesota to drop a decision like that on Thursday does kind of set them back here. At 7, it is the San Francisco 49ers. Now that everyone's getting healthy, this is starting to look like a good football team again. At 6, it is Washington. Again, we have to believe that there's something magical going on with the Commanders. At 5, it is Baltimore. The second, they have probably like 2 of the 3 worst losses in the NFL this year. But again, a couple of the best. They looked the best in a loss of any team, I think, this year in opening night against Kansas City. And they looked the best of any team has looked at any point this year when they beat up on the Buffalo Bills. At 4, it is Philadelphia. I said before, I'm not going to let myself get bought back in. And now here they are at 4. But you look at some of the wins they have and how dominant they looked in the last couple of weeks. I think power rankings wise, you have to move them up. At 3, it is Buffalo. Offensively, they have Amari Cooper around, and they have been able to put up a few pretty big numbers here on offense. Defense, I still think they need to make a move to address that, but offensively, they've got this figured out. At 2, it's Detroit. They have really got this figured out, and that is the sign to Jameson Williams, who I believe in the talent of, but obviously, there's some behavior that's not great and something going on there. And so this was a very quick reminder of, hey, kid, like, yeah, you got some talent. We done this without you, and we can keep doing it without you. So smarten up. And at number 1, they are the number 1 team in all the land. They are the Kansas City Chiefs. Defensively, one of the best in the league. Offensively, they have one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time, and they just keep winning. So they just keep staying at number 1 in the NFL power rankings. All right, the listicle show continues as we wrap things up today, looking at the UFC Pound-For-Pound rankings after UFC 308. UFC 308 provided a launching point for Ilia Topuria to really solidify his candidacy for Fighter of the Year, and already working his way up the pound-for-pound rankings. How high did he go after a gigantic knockout over Max Holloway? Let's find out. Staying at number 10, we don't have anyone falling out of the pound-for-pound rankings this week. Staying at number 10, it is Volkanovski, one of the most talented fighters in the history of the sport, and someone who, yes, has lost recently, but his 3 losses have all come to guys in the top half of these pound-for-pound rankings, so you can excuse that away a little bit. At number 9, it is Leon Edwards. When he beat Kamaru Usman a couple of times, Usman was still toward the top, if not at the top, of the pound-for-pound rankings, and so I think you still have to respect the resume that is going on there. Merab Dvalishvili made his way onto the pound-for-pound rankings a few months ago. He sticks around at number 8. At 7, it is Bilal Muhammad. When you win a championship over a guy who's in the pound-for-pound rankings, hey, guess what? You get to go into the pound-for-pound rankings. He's at 7. At 6, it's John Jones. For the love of all things good and holy, just fight already. At number 5, it is Tom Aspinall, the knockout king of the heavyweight division right now, waiting for John Jones and Stipe Miocic to finish their thing before he can fully solidify himself to everyone as the true king in the heavyweight division. At 4, we have our first change as Dricus du Plessis drops off of the podium into the number 4 spot. Yes, what he has done has been very, very, very impressive, and him moving down a spot is not a statement on him. It is a statement on our new number 3, Ilia Topuria. When you have a year where you beat Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway, in the ways that you have, you get to be in the top 3. It has been a meteoric rise for this kid. He is one of the really strong fighters in this game and so well-rounded, and that's a part that gets forgotten because he's knocking everybody out. You forget how good of a grappler he is as well. He is incredibly well-rounded. He's 27 years old, and it feels like the sky is the limit for him right now, and the resume already speaks to a guy who should be at the top of the pound-for-pound rankings. At 2, it is Alex Pereira. Again, 2-division champion recently, and is just running through everyone at 205 pounds. Give this guy a heavyweight opportunity, please. And at number 1, he stays number 1. It is Islam Makhachev. Again, he had 2 wins in a fight that was number 1 and number 2 pound for pound. So you just get to stay number 1 for a very long time when you end up doing that. Those are the updated power rankings after UFC 308. Bit of a quicker one today, but that's going to do it. Couple breaking news things. We got World Series game tonight, and then lists. Who doesn't love lists? So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We got a video game stream later on today. It is back to getting that Blue Jays dynasty rolling. We were very active at the trade deadline and trying to figure out the way to sign draft picks in this game. So we'll be doing that on MLB The Show at 3 o'clock. Then I have trivia tonight. It is a 7:30 start over at Pazzi Pizzeria. Don't be late and come enjoy the trivia there. Thursday, we are moving Fights in Football Fridays to Thursdays because of my new schedule over at Sportsnet 960 here in Calgary. So on Thursday, it is going to be the full NFL preview and the UFC rundown as well. And then Thursday night, I have some trivia. It's a Halloween theme over at Bitter Sisters, so come say hi to us there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. As always, follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. Fucking everywhere. So thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you guys in a few hours. Until then, have fun. Bye.